Wyoming Territory, June 1878. The wind moved quiet through the grass, but the blood on the porch boards was still fresh. Willow Carr stood with her rifle raised, her brown hair half loose from its braid, and her jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. The man in front of her, tall, dust-coated, and broad through the shoulders, had both hands raised, his own rifle hanging useless on his saddle. His horse snorted behind him, uneasy with the smell of death. "You're a day late," she said, voice sharp. "Maybe more." "I came as fast as I could," the cowboy said, voice low, steady. "My name's Thatcher Pierce. Your brother sent for me." Willow's breath hitched, just for a second. She looked past him, to the line of hills where no one else followed. The letter had said her brother, Caleb, had hired a man to help protect the homestead while he went south to San Juan for work. That was 3 weeks ago. "I buried Caleb yesterday," she said flatly. Thatcher's lips parted, but no sound came. He looked down, his hat clutched in one hand. "I'm sorry, Miss Carr. I swear to you, if I had known—" "You did not know," she cut in. "That's the problem." He looked up, brown eyes steady. "Let me help now." She stared at him. "I do not trust you." He stepped forward, slow and careful, like a man approaching a spooked horse. "Then let me spend my life earning it." Silence filled the wide Wyoming sky. Willow lowered the rifle. It was not the kind of place a man stayed for comfort. The log house was small, the land dry. The fence was broken in 2 places, and the coop had been raided 3 nights past. 2 children, Samson and Sadie, her late brother's twins, watched from the doorway with wide, quiet eyes. They were only 7, and they had not spoken much since their father died. Thatcher unsaddled his horse and set to work without asking. He patched the fence with what he could find in the barn. Then he hauled water, mended the coop door, and fixed the loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet. Willow watched him from the porch, arms crossed, a rifle always nearby. That night, the wind howled. Willow sat by the fire with her knees pulled up, the children asleep in the loft. Thatcher sat across from her, polishing his rifle. "You do not talk much," she said. "I talk when there's something worth saying." She studied him. His face was rough-hewn, sun-darkened, but his eyes were kind under the brim of his hat. "You knew my brother?" Thatcher nodded once. "We rode together once, chasing down a man who stole a whole herd from a ranch near Rawlins. Caleb saved my life. I owed him." She looked at the fire. "He trusted too easy." "I do not," Thatcher said. She glanced up. "Good." The next morning, Willow woke to the sound of the axe. From the window, she saw Thatcher splitting wood, his shirt off in the rising heat, sweat rolling down his back, the muscles in his arms working steady and strong. She turned away fast, heart kicking in her chest. Over the next days, Thatcher did not ask for her trust. He earned it in small, quiet ways. He taught Samson how to tie a proper hitch knot, showed Sadie how to whistle through her fingers. He never forced a word from them, just gave them the space to come close on their own. One afternoon, Willow found him brushing down her mule. "You do not have to do that," she said. "I know." He kept brushing. She watched him a moment. "Why are you here, really?" Thatcher looked up. "Because your brother asked. Because there were men circling this place when I rode in. Because you need help, and I need somewhere to belong." Willow blinked. "You do not belong here." "I could," he said softly. She left without answering. Trouble came on the 5th night. 3 men rode in after dark, the same ones who had been sniffing around since Caleb died. Willow recognized one by his crooked nose, the other by the red scarf he always wore. The third was new, mean-looking, with a scar across his jaw. They circled the house once, slow. Then they slipped off their horses and came toward the porch. Willow had her rifle ready. Thatcher stood beside her, shotgun in hand. "You are trespassing," Willow called. "You come closer, you will bleed." The man with the scar grinned. You got no man here to guard you now, Miss Carr. Just you and two brats. Thatcher stepped forward, slow and calm. You're going to turn around and ride off. The men laughed. Then Thatcher fired. The blast tore through the dark, hitting the ground inches from their boots. The men scrambled back, cursing. Their horses reared. One of them shouted something, then they were gone, pounding off into the night. Willow stood frozen. Her hands trembled. You all right? Thatcher asked, turning to her. She nodded once. You did not kill them, only wanted to scare them this time. She swallowed. What if they come back? Then I will be ready. Willow looked at him, really looked. His jaw was tight, eyes fierce. He would die for her. She did not know why, but she felt it in her bones. Her voice came quiet. I still do not trust you. He nodded. Then let me keep earning it. The next day, she cooked breakfast for him. Eggs and cornbread, not much, but it was something. He smiled when she set the plate down. Thank you. She sat across from him. Why did you never marry? He looked up. I tried once. She chose someone else. Willow nodded. I never tried. Never had the time. They ate in silence for a moment. You are kind to the children, she said. They are good kids. They miss their father. I know. She hesitated. Do you want children? Thatcher looked at her gently. I would not mind. She looked away, cheeks pink. I think they like you. I like them back. That night, she found him out by the corral, watching the stars. She walked up beside him, arms folded. I do not know how to do this, she said. He turned. Do what? Let someone in. He nodded. Then let me show you how. She looked up at him. You are not what I expected. He smiled. I get that a lot. She stepped closer. You are patient. You are worth it. Willow breathed in, then reached out and took his hand. He did not say anything, just held on. The hens had started laying again, as if danger passing in the night had loosened something in the soil. Willow cracked the eggs into a tin bowl while Sadie sat at the table stringing wildflowers into a crooked chain. Samson was outside, dragging a branch twice his size across the yard, determined to build something he hadn't named yet. Thatcher came in with a bucket of water, his boots dusted in dry earth. He set it down near the hearth and didn't speak until she looked up. Cedar broke a rear shoe. There's a forge in town. Willow wiped her hands on a cloth. 2 days' ride. The blacksmith's name is Corbin Stiles. He drinks, but he works true. What do you need from town? She hesitated. Fabric. For the girl. And salt. He nodded. I'll take the boy. Give him something to see. She turned toward him, brows raised. You think I'll let you ride off with Samson? I think you'll ride with us, he said. If you're willing. Willow stared at him, then glanced at Sadie. The girl's hands had gone still, her eyes lifted from her flowers. I haven't left this land since Caleb died. Then it's time. She didn't answer, but the next morning, she packed a satchel. They left at dawn, Samson riding behind Thatcher, Sadie with her arms around Willow's waist. The road was narrow, carved between dry rock and wind-bent cottonwood. Birds lifted from the brush as they passed, and by midday, the sun pressed hard enough to draw sweat beneath Willow's collar. They reached the edge of town by late afternoon. It was a rough place, no more than 30 buildings and a livery that leaned sideways. Children darted between posts, and 2 dogs fought over a scrap near the mercantile. Thatcher dismounted first, helping Sadie down with a quiet, "Mind your step now." Inside the store, the air smelled of old pine and tobacco. Willow chose a bolt of blue cotton that matched the girl's eyes and a sack of salt that dug into her shoulder. She said little, eyes flicking to every man who looked too long. Outside, Thatcher was crouched beside Samson, pointing out the iron tools hung on the blacksmith's wall. That one's for shoeing oxen, he said. See the curve in the claw? Keeps the hoof steady. Samson nodded, his face serious. Willow stepped closer. He's watching everything you do. Thatcher stood. Then I'd better do it right. They stayed the night in the loft above the stable, the children curled in bedrolls near the hay. Willow sat by the open slat, moonlight catching the edge of her cheek. Thatcher stood a few feet away, arms loosely folded. You grew up in Wyoming? He asked.
No. Missouri.
Came west with Caleb when I was 16. He bought this land for cheap. Said the soil would sweeten if we gave it time. Did it? Some.
She paused.
Enough. He nodded, then tilted his head. You always carry the weight for everyone else? She didn't answer right away. If I don't, who will? You don't have to, not alone. I don't know how else to be. That can change. She looked over at him, face unreadable. Everything about you says you've run. That true? He met her gaze. I ran from a war. I ran from a father who drank himself into fists. I ran from a ranch I built with my bare hands after they signed it over to a cousin I never met. But I'm not running now. She studied him in silence, then turned back to the window. Good. The next morning, they rode home before the sun climbed too high. The prairies stretched wide around them, gold and open and humming with life. Sadie slept against Willow's back, her cheek pressed to her shoulder, while Samson rode tall behind Thatcher, his small hands holding firm to the saddle's edge. At the gate, Willow dismounted first. She stepped onto her land like someone returning to more than a house. Thatcher lingered near the barn. You want me to stay in the bunkhouse? She shook her head.
No.
You've earned the porch. That night, after the children were tucked in, Willow brought out a second cup of coffee and set it on the rail beside him. He took it without a word, their shoulders brushing as they sat. You were right, she said quietly. About leaving. It helped. He nodded.
No?
She took a slow sip. I still don't trust easy. I don't want easy, he said. I want real. Willow looked at him then. Looked in a way she hadn't before, eyes steady, mouth soft. I'm not ready, she said. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. She nodded once. Then stay. July came dry and sharp-edged, the sky cloudless for 9 days straight. The grass turned brittle underfoot, and the creek behind the barn sank low enough that the cattle began to nose at the troughs by mid-morning. Thatcher built a windlass over the well without being asked, and Willow watched him work from the kitchen door, her apron stiff with flour. That evening, the children were with the neighbor's widow, Mrs. Keene, who had offered to keep them while Willow repaired the loft's leaking roof. She hadn't asked for Thatcher's help but hadn't turned it down either when he climbed up beside her with a bucket of nails and a quiet look. They worked until the sun dipped behind the cottonwoods. Afterward, they sat on the roof's ridge, legs dangling over the edge. The wind moved through the tall grass below, and a hawk cried once from the east. Willow ran a hand down her braid, then glanced sidelong. You ever wonder what you'd be if you'd been born somewhere else? Thatcher shifted. I try not to. Seems like wishing backward. She nodded, mouth turned down slightly. I used to think I'd teach. I could always read better than Caleb. You still could. I barely keep this place standing. He looked at her then, eyes steady. You ever think you're allowed more than survival? She stared straight ahead. Not often. He didn't press her. Just waited. After a long stretch of quiet, she turned toward him. What about you? Thatcher leaned back on his hands. I figured I'd die before 30. Didn't plan past that. She let out a breath, almost a laugh. And now? Now I'd like to build something that lasts. Willow's voice lowered. You mean here? He didn't answer, but he didn't look away. Later, when they climbed down, she paused with one hand on the ladder. You don't ask for much. I don't need much. She studied him. That's almost true. He smiled, slow and tired. Almost. Inside, she didn't light a lamp. The room held enough light from the moon, and she stood near the open window, arms wrapped around her middle. She didn't move when he stepped across the threshold. "You're not what I expected either," she said. Thatcher stayed by the door. "What did you expect? A man who wanted the land? Or thought I was easy? I don't want anything you won't give." She turned toward him. "That's the hardest kind. I can wait." Willow's voice caught. "I don't want to need anyone." "You don't," he said. "You choose me or you don't. That's all." She looked down at her bare feet on the worn floorboards. "I don't know how to choose something that doesn't hurt. You already are." She lifted her gaze. "Then stay." He crossed the room and took her hand with care, like he was afraid of breaking something delicate. She didn't pull away. "I will," he said. "As long as you ask." She let her fingers close around his. "Then don't stop." The wind shifted east overnight, bringing cooler air and the scent of wild sage. By morning, the sky had gone pale with high clouds, and the sun filtered through soft and quiet. Willow stood at the edge of the pasture, sleeves rolled to her elbows, watching Thatcher mend a loose rail on the far fence line. He worked without looking up, steady and exact, and she didn't call to him. There was something in the rhythm of it she didn't want to break. Behind her, Sadie's laughter spilled through the open barn door. She was chasing a chicken that had wandered too close to Samson's whittling pile. The boy crouched with a blade in hand, carving slow, careful lines into the length of a sycamore branch. His tongue pressed to the corner of his mouth in concentration. By midday, the children had fallen into a game beneath the shade tree, and Willow sat on the porch steps with a bundle of mending in her lap. She didn't look up when Thatcher approached, dust rising off his boots. "You planning to rest at all?" he asked. "I rest when the sun sets." He hooked a thumb toward the barn. "That pitchfork's on its last leg. I'll ride out tomorrow and see if the Keen boy has a spare." She nodded, eyes on the tears she was stitching. "Don't ride alone." He crouched beside her. "You offering company?" Her needle paused. "I'm offering sense." "Then I'll take both." Her lips pressed together, not quite a smile. He let the silence stretch before speaking again. "You ever think of selling the cattle?" She glanced at him, startled. "They're the only thing that keep this land fed." "You could trade them. Start something smaller. Maybe goats." Easier for the girl to handle. Willow threaded the needle through fabric. "You think I can't manage what's here?" "I think you manage at the cost of yourself." She set the mending aside. "I don't want a smaller life." "I didn't say smaller. I said different." Her eyes darted toward the pasture. "This place is the last thing that's mine." He stood, brushing dirt from his knee. "Then let's make it into something that holds you instead of breaks you." She looked up at him, the light catching the edge of her jaw. "What would that look like?" Thatcher shifted his weight. "Fewer things to hold alone. More hands at the table. A reason to come in at night." She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. That evening, she let him sit beside her on the porch without a word. They watched the sun dip low behind the hills, and the air turned sweet with the smell of dry grass and distant rain. Willow leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and her voice came quiet. "My mother died before I was grown. Caleb raised me best he could, but he wasn't built for softness. I learned early not to ask for anything I couldn't earn." Thatcher kept his eyes on the horizon. "You've earned more than you think." She folded her hands. "The children, he told me to raise them like they were mine. That's what I've done." "You've done right by them. That doesn't mean I know how to love someone grown." He turned toward her. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." She was quiet for a long time. "Then, if I asked you to stay without promising anything more, would you?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Willow nodded once, then looked out at the land, where the light had gone soft and gold over the fields. Her voice was steady when she spoke again. Then start building the goat pen tomorrow. Just in case. Thatcher's chest lifted with the breath. He didn't speak aloud. He looked at her, not with surprise, but with a kind of quiet reverence. I'll need to clear the far corner. Won't take long. She met his gaze, eyes steady. Take your time. He stayed beside her until the last light faded, neither of them speaking. The silence no longer something to fill, but something they shared. The goat pen came together slower than expected. The corner of the pasture they'd chosen was rock-laden, and the posts had to be sunk deeper than Thatcher anticipated. Willow worked beside him, sleeves rolled, her hands blistering under leather gloves she hadn't worn since spring. They didn't speak much as they worked. The sound of tools and wind filled the space between them. That evening, with Sadie and Samson asleep in the loft and a storm rolling quiet over the far hills, Willow lit a stub of candle and found Thatcher at the back door, oiling the hinges with an old tin can. He looked up when he heard her steps but didn't straighten. I found that account book Caleb kept, she said. He'd marked down a debt owed from a man near Rock Creek.
$30.
It might help us through winter. Thatcher set the can aside. You planning to ride there? I was. He wiped his hands on a rag. I'll go with you. She leaned against the doorframe. Can't leave the children alone. He nodded. I'll ride. I'll collect it. Willow folded her arms. You sure he'll pay you? I don't plan to ask.
She didn't argue.
If you're not back in 5 days, I'll come looking. I'll be back in 4. He left at first light. The days stretched longer than they should have, each one growing quieter without his boots on the porch or his voice under the eaves. Willow kept her hands busy churning, stitching, checking the fence lines, but at night, she found herself listening for the sound of hooves. Sadie caught her once, standing at the window after dark. Miss Willow, she said, tugging her sleeve, he's coming back. You don't have to worry. Willow knelt in front of her and brushed the hair from her face. I'm not worried.
Sadie yawned.
Yes, you are. But it's all right. Thatcher returned on the 4th evening, as promised. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, and a cut ran along his jaw, but he was upright and calm, hands steady on the reins. She met him at the gate and took hold of the bridle, not speaking, not asking. He handed her a folded packet. He paid. Not all, but enough. She opened it. This is more than 30. I told him he owed you interest. Willow looked up. And the cut. He disagreed. She touched the edge of it, careful. You didn't have to fight for it. I didn't fight, he said. I finished it. She stepped back. You're bleeding. It's worth it. That night, she pressed a cool cloth to his skin and stitched the torn shirt while he sat at the table, eyes half lidded with fatigue. Samson watched from the stair rail, saying nothing, but not looking away. When Willow rose to fetch water, the boy slipped down and leaned against Thatcher's arm. You come back for us, he said. Thatcher's voice was quiet. I always will. The next week brought rain. It soaked the earth until the creek swelled, and the goats 2 does and a buck arrived in a cart pulled by Mrs.
Qui soldeste sont.
A gift, she said. From one widow to another, who ain't any more. Willow stiffened. I'm not, Mrs. Keene only winked. You will be, or he'll stop pretending he's sleeping in the bunkhouse. Thatcher helped unload the goats, saying nothing while Willow stood with her arms crossed. That night, when the wind softened and the children were long asleep, she found him in the barn, leaning against the stall gate. You didn't argue, she said. About what she said. He turned. Didn't see the point in lying. Willow stepped inside. The lantern beside him glowed warm on the hay. I spent most of my life thinking I had to carry everything myself, she said. I was wrong. He stepped forward, slow. What do you want now? She didn't look away. You. Thatcher's throat moved as he swallowed. Then I'm yours. She reached for him, hands threading behind his neck, and he held her like he'd been waiting since the day he first saw her on the porch, rifle in hand and grief carved into her bones. They didn't speak for a while. They just breathed the same air. The next morning, the children found them at the table, her hand tucked over his, the stove warm with fresh bread. Samson looked at her. "Are we going to keep him?" Willow nodded. "We are." They married in late September, beneath the cottonwood that shaded the pasture. Mrs. Keene brought pie. The children wore new clothes stitched from the blue cotton she'd chosen that day in town. The preacher was from 3 homesteads over and didn't linger afterward. In the crisp light of evening, Thatcher took Willow's hand and led her out past the fence line, where the land rolled open toward the hills. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked. She squeezed his hand. "I used to think I'd die here alone. And now—" She turned to him, her voice steady. "Now I think I'll live here. With you." They stood there until the stars came out, their arms around each other, the wind soft through the grass. The land hadn't changed, but it felt different. Held together. Whole. Years passed, and the goat herd grew. Samson took to carpentry, shaping beams and cradles with hands that remembered how to carve. Sadie learned to cure herbs and gather honey, and when she married a ranch boy from the next county, Thatcher built them a cottage near the South Ridge. Willow cried only once, and Thatcher held her until she stopped. The house never grew much larger, but it never felt small again. And every night, as the lantern light dimmed and the wind eased against the walls, Willow reached for him, her hand finding his in the dark. They never let go.